Hello, hello. Laura Brandenburg here from Bridging the Gap, and apologies for being just a couple minutes late. I have forgot that we had a contest, and I needed to figure out the winner. So I did that at the last minute, right before jumping on. So I will announce that in just a minute. But while people are joining, I always like to share a brief, kind of story or insight or aha I had. And today, what happened is it's hurricane season here in North Carolina. Hi, Kesha, welcome. And we evacuated for Hurricane Florence in a few weeks last year, mid-September, and it was actually right at the close, the last day of the launch. We were driving, and it was like a 6-hour drive to Winston-Salem. It was a little crazy, but now there's a hurricane coming towards Florida, might hit the coast, blah, blah, blah. My daughter today was like, I want to check on the status of it, right? And she's 7, and is kind of a little consumed by it. And I was like, all right, you can check on the status of it, and you can look into that, right? But we're not going to obsess over it. We're not going to worry about it before we need to. I feel like it's important to realize, hey, it's hurricane season. Make sure you got your hurricane kit ready. And then it's important to realize, hey, it's time for you to evacuate. In between those two things, it doesn't really merit much of my attention. And that's because I really do believe thoughts become things, and what you give energy to expands, right? So I know that's what happened to me last year, is I got really worried about stuff, and it did not serve me well. I will tell you that. So I'm trying to reinforce that with my daughter as well. And I would just encourage you to think about how that might be showing up for you. Maybe it's not hurricanes, maybe it's something else, maybe it's negative stuff that you see in the news, or something that kind of sucks your energy and doesn't build you up. So one of the big things we always get when we close down the training that we're releasing right now is oh, I just didn't have time to do it. Okay, these videos inside the free training are 10 to 15 minutes long, right? How much time do you spend every day watching the news, right? What are you choosing to put your attention and your focus on? And often when we do that, there is so much more opportunity for us to expand and invest in ourselves. So I just wanted to start with that story. So Kesha, welcome. If you're listening in, feel free to say hello. I do have a little bit of a cough, and I'm a little congested, so I will be drinking a lot of water during this, and apologize in advance if that's a distraction. But I wanted to see through this commitment I made to you. It was tempting to be I'm too sick, I'm too tired, I'm not going to be my best self, and back out, but it was important to me to make good on that commitment. There are times when I've had to step back from things, and my team has stepped up for me, which is an incredible experience. But this was just not one of those times. And oh, thank you, Keisha. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's always a challenge to know how to pronounce everyone's names, so I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about analyzing a business process and the questions that have come up around that. And so I have pulled some questions from the group, as well as some questions we've received individually and some questions we've received on the free training page. And so I'm going to speak to those. And before I dive into that, I wanted to share one more story with you. So if you listen to my first coaching call in the group on the opportunities for business analysts, you heard me share about how frustrated I was in my career before I got into the QA role, and how happy I was, and how I was on a really limited salary, and what that meant for my personal life and my financial security and all kinds of things, right? So I wanted to talk, though, about how that opportunity to become a QA engineer manifested for me, because it's easy to look back on the outside and say, oh, that just kind of was lucky, and really, it wasn't just luck, specifically to the QA space and even to the BA space too. So when I was in editorial, and the thing that I heard that kind of got me out of this resentment, negative energy, attracting everything I didn't want, which is more boredom, more frustration, more resentment for all the things not going well in my career, I heard somebody say, well, all the good ones go to IT. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? And how can I get myself on an IT project? I want to be one of the good ones, right? There's a little bit of achievement orientation that I have that I'm coming to terms with. Even in just the last week, I've come to terms with that at a new level. And so what did that mean for me? That meant I was asking my boss, how can I get assigned to an IT project? Like they would pull in the editorial teams. Our main work was on books and print books, but you know, there was all these projects that use some of our content into a software project. And if you were on a team whose content was getting used on that software project, they would ask you to be involved to like represent the content and maybe do some testing and be involved kind of as a subject matter expert on that content. And so I was like, how can I get involved? How can I just kept asking, right? And eventually I got assigned as supporting one of the senior editors on my team in his role on a software project. I was like, yes. And then like the common mindset in our team was like, when you're on a software project, you do as little as possible. This is like the other work. Our main work is the books. If you're on a software project, you don't volunteer for anything extra. You don't do this, you don't do that. Do as little as possible to save your time for the books. Well, as you know, I was bored out of my mind on the book stuff. And so I was like, I want to do as much as possible, right? And I just kind of showed up with that intention. And I was still kind of behind the scenes because he was the one that got to go to the meetings and all of that. So part of the piece that was a little lucky, you would say, is that he went on a 3-week vacation. 3 weeks. And I got to go to the meetings. I got to volunteer for stuff. And I volunteered to test the content, and all of a sudden somebody's showing me how to use this, like would be kind of the equivalent of like running SQL queries, but it was a custom software that we were using. And I got taught how to use the system and what the syntax was. It was super simple. And I got to kind of do some testing. All of a sudden people were finding issues and I was like, oh, the root cause of that is this and this and this. Right? Like my analytical mind, my philosophy training, my logic training allowed me to figure out what those problems were and why those were problems. And a month later, I was offered an opportunity to join the QA team, which enhanced my salary by like 40%, like that. So what's the lesson there? The lesson there is saying yes to opportunity. When you are in any time, right? As you get further up in your career, you have to be selective because you will have more opportunities than you can possibly imagine, and people will be coming to you, and you have to learn to set boundaries, right? But early in your career, when you're frustrated or resentful, it's like yes to anything that moves you in the slightest degree towards where you want to go. So, you know, if you're on a career path that's going this way, it's going to be hard on video, this way, and you want to be this way, even if it's just like, oh, look at this one here. It's like moving me a little bit in that direction, like with the software project, right? I don't even know if I'm going to like software projects, but it's something different. And I said yes, and I showed up, and then I volunteered. I volunteered for something I had no idea how to do, and I asked for help. Somebody was completely willing to train me for an hour to do that so that I could invest hours of my time and add value to the project that she didn't have to do. She was like, yes, I'll spend an hour training you so that I don't have to spend hours doing this testing. It was beautiful. So that is one of our themes in this part 2 of the free training. So yes, it's about how to analyze a business process, but it's really about how do you step up and contribute when you want to be a business analyst, when you want to expand your business analysis responsibilities. So if you're just joining us, feel free to say hello. Let me know your name. Well, your name will come up in Facebook, but let me know where you're from and what you're doing today, and if you have any questions about business process. All right, so I've got my notes up in front of me here with the questions. So let's talk about some of the questions that came up about this. So Cynthia said, Laura, you're an inspiration. Thank you. And I have an MSc in IT and management, but the job offers I get are within retail and administration. I worked in these industries prior to my university study. I know you spoke about starting where I am, but there is no opportunity in most companies I've worked for recently, and I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. What I enjoy is business analysis and working in teams. I have qualifications, a little bit of experience from internships, but that hasn't gotten me in the door. So what do I do next? So Cynthia, like I just talked about, you create your opportunity, okay? And sometimes it requires looking at what's in front of you with a different lens. So instead of there's no opportunity, how can I create an opportunity here? Where is the opportunity I'm not seeing? I will tell you, if you have a firm desire to be a business analyst, the opportunity is there. You just might not be seeing it. So an example of this was Amelia McHenry, and I've talked about her before. Didn't talk about exactly how she got into her business analyst role. So she actually had the title of business analyst when she was in her program, but she didn't have a project to do the activities that we teach in the blueprint. And she didn't have that project because like the projects kept getting pulled from her in her organization. And so it was really frustrating that like have the title, but not actually have the role, right? We hear a lot of people having the role, but not the title, but she had the title, but not the role. And so she volunteered for her husband's company, who's a director of IT infrastructure, and was like, is there anywhere that you could use help analyzing a process? And they're like, yes. And then she did such great work, got a great response, and then was like, is there anywhere you could use help with use case? And they're like, yes. And also got a great response, right? So this is how you do it. Like that's just one way. For her, it was like she used her husband's connection. She even talks about in her success story, like she's like, we don't usually like work together. That's not our thing. Like I had to say, this is my role here, and this is how we're working together, right? So this is an opportunity that was in front of her that she had some resistance to, and so look outside the box. A similar story from Todd Fleming. Now his story just went up on the blog today, so you probably haven't seen it yet. But he was between jobs when he joined us, and he went back to his previous employer and said, I have this new skill set that I'm working on and elevating. I'd be happy to do a little pro bono work for you in order to leverage these skills and practice these skills. Do you have anything up? And it's like, oh yeah, we're actually going through a merger. We could really use your expertise as someone who's developed our system and also has deep subject matter expert knowledge in our system. So, and that actually led to paying contract work with them again. So that created, it's a little bit of free that he added at first, and then created paying project work. So my advice to you, Cynthia, is just focus on getting in the door, whether that's in your retail role, in a role that you're getting called for, or even like just building that BA experience in more of a volunteer role, which will help you get in the door. Okay, and so create those opportunities. They are always there for you. All right, I'm just going to check the comments here. All right. Shashank, hi, is it necessary to have an IT background or knowledge if you want to become a BA? Great question, and I'm going to check my notes because somebody else also asked that question, and I wanted to make sure to talk about it today. So Roseanne posted in the group, similar question. Her question was, I'm not a formal BA, I'm a project manager, but required to uncover the business requirements of most of my projects, since we do not yet have a BA in our PMO. One such role would be created soon. Opportunity, right? It's sitting there, just ready, getting ready for it. We're told that a new role will be created soon, and I'm deciding if that is the direction I want to take. I work in IT, and I joined the PMO with little IT knowledge, so I'm a little leery of taking on such a role without IT education. And you're sharing the knowledge and skills you have so far has been a huge help. So this is similar. I don't have an IT background. I don't have IT knowledge. I don't have IT training. So we are going to get into this more in the third video, but I do want to set that up for you. Myself, besides that like random system that I learned to use, which was not like coding any of it, it was just like knowing how to put some syntax in. I have no training, no IT training, no coding experience. Manzoli is another example of this. He came into business analysis as a subject matter expert, and so he learned the core BA skills that he needed as in the blueprint so that he could be successful in any domain. And then he landed a senior BA role in a different area, right? So it's more about your BA skills. Sarah Rankin, her success story is up on the blog as well. She came to us in mostly a trainer, a little bit of BA role. And as she went through learning more business analysis skills and seeing that that's really where her desire, her innate gifts were, she expanded the aspect of her role that was business analysis. Again, she didn't have any IT background. What she did have, though, is some of the skills to analyze the requirements and get specific about the software. So when you are working as a BA on a software project and not all roles are working on software projects, but the vast majority of roles out there today are, then you need to be able to specify the requirements to the degree that the software developer knows what to build, right? And not how to design the system, but what to build. And that requires a degree of specificity that you might not be used to thinking in. And so that's why we teach use cases, and that's why we teach data modeling, to help you learn how to figure out that degree of specificity. So that is, like, I wouldn't focus on learning the tech. You learn to speak in software requirements language and think in software requirements language in order to be able to have conversations with technical stakeholders and ask really powerful questions and really get to the level of detail they need to be able to build what they're building. And then you can have those conversations and you don't have to understand the technology. All right, great. So let me just go, lots of comments here, I love it. Just a second, I lost my scroll. And excuse me in advance, this is, it's actually really grateful. The worst of the cold hit Wednesday morning. So I went live here Tuesday, and then I had Wednesday, Thursday, which is the worst of the cold, and it's getting a little better now. Hi, Leslie. Leslie's from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome. Also in North Carolina. Oh, and Sarah just joined. Sarah, I was just talking about you. Your ears must have been burning. And Leslie is working as a project manager and studying to get a PMP. I want to learn more about developing project requirements. Perfect. You probably benefited from that discussion. And Andrew says, found it. Yay, yay, I'm glad you're here. Andrew also says, I have no IT background. I find in my current position, things quickly go towards tech very quickly before the team investigates the as-is process. It's very overwhelming. They go straight to the how without knowing what the need is. Okay, so what I love about what you are saying here, Angie, is you are aware of how important it is to analyze the process before you figure out the software requirements. And let that overwhelm, like the way you get out of overwhelm is by breaking things down for yourself and taking one step at a time. So it is natural to be overwhelmed if everybody's trying to like talk about the solution and using a lot. Usually there's a lot of terminology, and there might be tech terminology and business terminology, and that conversation can be very fast paced, right? And you feel like you're just drowning in information. So when you feel that way, and I'm guessing based on just what you shared right there that you're a super person and you're thinking very clearly and you've got a strong analytical mind, right? So when you feel that way, there is other people in the room that feel that way. And there is incredible value to slowing down the conversation and to say, I understand that we're trying to do whatever this little techie thing is, right? Can we just step back and make sure we're solving the right problem here? Let's walk through what your process is today or what your process would be if you were using this. Let's just make sure we're solving the right problem. And then having the power to say, oh, wait, that's not super clear. Could you go into that in a little bit more depth? What do you actually do there? Or actually sitting down and observing a stakeholder is another great way to have that conversation and kind of get them to share what's going on. So trust that overwhelm, that it's telling you that something is a little bit off track, okay? And take steps to slow it down. Your project will be much, much better for it. Hey, Todd, I was actually just talking about you too. So awesome. Your ears must have been burning as well. Sarah and Todd are both in the house. Welcome. All right, so feel free if you are on live to answer a question. I'm going to go back through some of the questions we have received, both in the group and outside the group. So Andrea, I also wanted to address your question, and I'm glad you're here. You're here live, so let's dig into this. So we talked a little bit about the overwhelm. Your question, though, was around helping your stakeholders work through the fear. And the biggest thing you're faced with daily is like, we don't just focus on making their processes more efficient. We also have to re-engineer, and then they think they will become redundant and people will lose their jobs. And in actual fact, it's just the opposite. I often feel that I don't have the skills to deal with it all. Okay, so thank you for your share and your vulnerability there. And like, this is the real deal. Like, I have worked on projects where the end result of that project was that people lost their job, or like that an entire department was closed down, or an entire office was closed down. And I will say the time that it happened, I had the luxury of not knowing that was the case. So the executive story was that we're making things more efficient because we see our business growing and we want this team to be able to handle more work. And whether they knew in advance or not, I don't know, right? Like, I have no idea how that worked. But that was the reality, is that like, we went in and did all kinds of great work, and those stakeholders really overcame a lot of resistance to work with us, and they did lose their jobs. And like, that can happen. And so I just want to have like eyes open. Sometimes our work as business analysts has that result. The thing about that, though, is that no amount of resistance to change is going to help you or them keep their job, right? So there's no entrenchment that's strong enough to like keep people in it. Like, that's not what is working in today's organizations, right? And so their resistance is not going to be more powerful than the stream of change that's happening in your organization. So the people who do succeed and the people who do get put into other jobs, they are the ones who are embracing the change, who are trying to get ahead of the change, and who are making the most of those opportunities to change. This is for us in business analysis role, whether it's agile or digital transformation or whatever like the thing is that our organizations are working on. Like, be a part of it, embrace it. All of those things mean there's more opportunities for us as business analysts. Okay, it's also for our end users and our stakeholders. How can we help them get ahead of the change? And so that's the story that I would start telling them. It's like, our company's investing in your work getting better, or your work getting more efficient, so that you can do even higher level things. Like, what might your future look like when you don't have to like spend all this time reconciling the spreadsheets, or whatever it is that they get stuck in, whatever monotonous work that they're doing. And the reality is, not everyone is going to jump on that bus. So there's a role you can play in encouraging them, but there's also like, you're responsible to them and helping them step into that story. You're not responsible for them and that reality. But do your best to lay out that picture and paint that picture for them and help them step into that. And that is the best piece, or the best place to be, is you can be the person who inspires them to create more change in their lives too. All right, great question. I'm glad you brought that up, Andrea. All right. Tracy asked, what are the thoughts on the change in the duties of a business analyst in some areas being replaced by program managers? For example, in her area, Seattle, BAs are data analysts doing BI work, but the program managers are doing the classically defined BA work. Is this happening everywhere else? So I love this question, because this is where I get to be a little tongue-in-cheek. And I think I just replied, like, great opportunity for business analysts, right? And I wanted to expand on that a little bit, because it's so important to focus on the role and not the title. So if you're in your local area, the people doing the work that you want to do under the business analysis hat is called program manager. Great, be a program manager. It doesn't mean you're not a business analyst. It doesn't mean you can't get a BA certification. It doesn't mean anything. It means that you're a program manager doing business analysis work, or you're a project manager doing business analysis work. And there really are two types of roles. So there is the IT, or sorry, not the IT, but the data analysis, business intelligence kind of BA role, which often has the business analyst job title. And then there's the process functional software requirements BA role that we talk about and teach at Virginia Gap. Both very different roles, lots of overlap between them. One prepare you for the other, but you get to choose which one is right for you, and what are the titles that are used in your local area, your organization, and pursue those. So that is actually an opportunity. My title when I was doing something similar, I was Director of Enterprise Analysis. And I got to make up that title, and I researched what I thought that title should be for a long time. And in that role, I was doing some VA strategy work. So I was looking at all the programs and projects going on in the organization and figuring out how they strategically fit together. And then I was also managing a team of business analysts, project managers, and quality assurance professionals and building those practices from the ground up. And by the time I left that organization, that team was 15 people across those 3 areas. But my favorite part of the work was like that strategic BA work, which you would think of as kind of program management or enterprise analysis work now in contemporary literature. I had no idea that's what it was called at the time. I just knew that's what lights me up. I get to figure out how all these things work together and look at the key business objectives we're accomplishing and how the solution, the different pieces of the solution can get deployed across all these projects and making sure that everything was integrated. All right, so let's see here. Yes, let's see some comments coming in. Okay. Sarah says, that's a great point, Laura, about resistance to change and it not being stronger than moving towards change. I have seen that those resistance to change are singling themselves out and not in a good way. And we BAs are not responsible for people to change. You're only responsible to yourselves. Yes. And you definitely don't want to be on the other side of that, right? You need to be jumping on those bandwagons. And the other thing I will say here about opportunities to analyze a process, because we started talking about opportunities and leaning in and jumping in and saying yes, like anywhere in your organization that there is change is where you want to be focusing your efforts, especially if you're trying to break in to a business analyst role. So not too long ago, I was talking to one of our course participants who's still working in like a medical call center type environment and really working hard to break into business analyst role and kind of facing a lot of resistance to that. It's a big jump from where he is to where he wants to be. But the piece that they are deploying is they're deploying some sort of video software and some new software to enable them to do something different with their jobs and improve their jobs. And I was like, whatever you do, get involved in that, right? Whether it's as a subject matter expert on the project representing your department, whether it's like the end user tester, testing it and helping, do user acceptance testing, whatever you do, get involved in that change because it will lead to more BA responsibilities for you. Might not feel like that at first. It might feel like, remember I was sharing there's that gap. You want to be going here, you're going here. It might just feel like this little bit of a turn. But when you start to make that little bit of a turn, you create some momentum and it often snowballs, mixing metaphors there a bit, but it snowballs into bigger opportunities for you. Okay. Excuse me. Keisha says, what user story mapping tools have you found that works best to help you create as-is and to-be diagrams? Do you create an Excel spreadsheet to help you identify the actors who will interact with the product, what they need to do, and any external or internal events that will trigger from what they need to do? So I haven't used a user story mapping document or tool to map an as-is or to-be process. When you go to the free training, you can download our free business process template. It's a Word document that walks you through the key sections and the information that you need to fully analyze a business process. And then the visual component of that is a workflow diagram. And that workflow diagram can be created in Visio, it can be created in Lucid Charts. Quite honestly, it can be created on a pen and like a piece of paper and hand drawn. We actually accept hand drawings in our course. Clear hand drawings that we can read, right? But like because it's so important, it's more important to understand the skills and understand the concepts and how those things flow together than it is like the tools come second to that. So those are the tools that we teach, or the skills and the pieces that we teach. So I would ask Keisha, like, what problem are you trying to solve with that? Like, where are you getting stuck in your business analysis process? where you're looking for kind of this mapping and the internal and the external triggers and all that. And we can talk through that. And I'm going to apologize. I'm going to put myself, I actually don't know how to put myself on mute, so this is kind of embarrassing, but. All right. The joys of having a cold and running a lunch. All right. What else? Feel free to leave a comment. All right. Let me just make sure. Oh, I did want to share a couple more examples because this is where people get stuck too, is like, what can I do to analyze the business process? So, I mean, I've seen so many examples come up. We had somebody volunteer at their local pharmacy and analyze the process of filling prescriptions. And how did that work out for them? They actually did a little pro bono work, and then about 10 hours, and then that person wanted them to do more, and she's like, well, no, I'm looking for paying work. I can't just keep volunteering. But she created such credibility with that person and he was well known in the local community in her space, like the medical healthcare space she was seeking. And so it became a very powerful reference for her and helped her get an interview at another business analysis position. We've had people volunteer at local nonprofits. So like their church, the process of receiving donations. We had someone who interviewed, I'm going to kind of frame it one way and then frame it another way. We had someone interview a stakeholder about their new member orientation process. The stakeholder was his wife while she was making dinner, and it was a local parent-teacher conference, right, or parent-teacher organization. So you can really apply these concepts anywhere. And if you're struggling to find the opportunity, just look at what are the things that happen consistently, where are the gaps, where are the problems, where's the flow of work that either brings money into my organization or resource into my organization or processes like value in my organization, and just kind of start to look for where that is, and there's a business process there, guarantee it. Okay, Charmy says, my client doesn't encourage business analysis after requirements elicitation and insists to jump directly to quality assurance tasks like test plan creation, test execution, etc. Please suggest what all pointers should we keep to make them realize the importance of business analysis. Yeah, so I throw that one back to you. What problems is that causing for your organization? So there's some organizations that use test plans, by which they really mean test cases, and they document the requirements as test cases and then use those test cases to feed the requirements, right? So they essentially are the requirements. And if that's what you're doing, is that working? Or is there a gap, right? So what I found on my first Agile team, where I felt like I had to throw all my BA skills out the door and go from this big picture vision statement we created to very granular user stories, it's like I got a certain part of the way through, and then I like lost track of all the details. And actually stepping back and looking at those requirements in a use case format helped me get the big picture of what we were trying to implement. And then even another step back and looking at the business processes and how the business work would flow after we implemented the software helped me find additional gaps. So it could be by jumping right into these very detailed test cases, you're missing that big picture view and you're missing requirements. Right? And then you can position that as, hey, when we do this jump from here to here, we're missing these things because we're not thinking through the requirements in an analytical way. And then you want to go forward with a suggestion. And my suggestion is that we add this piece to very quickly and effectively analyze the requirements, come up with even better questions to ask to make sure that our test case work is really powerful and reflects the true business needs. So that's how I'd suggest you go around that one. But you want it to be tied to a problem that your organization is experiencing so that there's an implied value in the activity. All right, so I'm going to announce the winner. Feel free to get any last question in. But so before I do, I want to just say, like, I loved the shares. So if you see the thread in the group, I just kind of did a call out. Excuse me, a call out for what would being successful as a business analyst mean to you, right? And beautiful, beautiful shares. I loved every single one of them. A couple of them where I would get to mentor others because I didn't have a mentor. I would feel confidence and not overwhelmed. Just the steady improvement that I would get to make to my business. Our customers would have a better experience with us. I would be the guy. Oh, I can't read my own writing here. A guide to best possible solution. Oh, that's what it is. I would get to be the guide to the best possible solutions. So beautiful shares. I would love to hear what would a successful business analyst career mean to you. And our winner is Mapagi Romi. And so I will tag you in the group after this, and you'll just need to send us your mailing address so we can get your complimentary copy of the book out. And I had said in the video, I would give one on Facebook and one on LinkedIn. We only got one comment on LinkedIn, and it was not an answer to the question. So yeah, we're not going to do that one. So Facebook, you showed up on this one, on the Facebook group, so go you. So that's what I have to share today. And Charmy says, sure. Super excited to be here. We are going into a holiday weekend in the US. So we released the third part. Oh, lots of comments there. Lots of likes. All right. Yes, holiday weekend. And so our third part of our free training will go live on Tuesday. And so there was a lot of questions here about what skills do I need? How do I succeed if I don't have IT training, technical background, or IT experience? And the third part of that training is really going to walk you through what are the different techniques. So some of the things I've been talking about with use cases and data modeling. So what are these things? What are they? And we'll do a bit of a crash course on what those skills are so that you can get a feel for how this might work for you, even if you don't have an IT background. And quite honestly, even if you do, those skills challenge you to look at what you know about the technology in a business-focused way so that you can have more productive conversations with your business stakeholders without dropping into technical speak that they bog out on. So it's important whether you are from a business or a technical background. And that's what's coming on Tuesday. And I will go live again in the group on Wednesday and answer your questions about that. So feel free to comment on the post or the page that has the free training, comment here. I will pull those questions together, and I'll be going live here Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And in between now and then, feel free to post in the group and tag me with your questions or your ahas. And looking forward to helping you take the next step in your business analyst career. And thank you, Angie. I will feel better soon. Lots of rest. And Charmy, thank you. I'm glad that what you found was helpful. All right. I'm Laura Brandenburg from Bridging the Gap, and we build our profession one business analyst at a time. Success starts with you. So thank you for being here, and have a great holiday weekend, and we will be back next week. Oh my goodness, here we go. Well, this is the embarrassment of the second. This is going to be on the blooper reel, I swear. All right, I've got my second screen up, and there we can't find the mouse. All right, there, I'm over. I found my mouse clicker, so you're welcome. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.